How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Everyone's having a lovely day. So we have now heard Nick Krall questioned about the future of David Bell as the manager of the Cincinnati Reds. He came out and said, hey, offseason comes around, we're going to reevaluate things going into 2025 to see what the best situation is for the Reds, which is, of course, very eye-opening because that's clearly a way of saying, hey, we're very much open to moving forward with a different manager. Otherwise you just kind of brush it off, throw it to the side, like I wasn't worried about that ain't a concern right now, or about this season, or about finishing out strong, whatever. But to say, hey, we're going to reevaluate says a lot, which means, hey, let's stop and take a look back at David Bell and the expectations, some big statistics, by the way, of why we are where we are with the Reds. But, there's a lot that goes into being a manager in baseball. We've always said in the past, like, hey, of all the games, obviously you have to have a good team. You got to have talented players around you. But of all the sports, I think it's one of the places where managers can have such a big impact on the performance of players from a confidence standpoint. Baseball being one of those sports, probably the biggest sport where confidence is the most, right? Because you got to be set. You can't be second guessing yourself at the plate every time. You got three chances, 4 chances a game to really go out there and perform. You're not constantly out there rep after rep after rep. You don't take 20 shots a game. You're not constantly on the ice. You're not on the field half the game. You don't have a chance to get into it. All the pressure and reward is on you to call ball, call a strike, swing, miss, whatever. It's a very difficult game. That's why we see guys get hot and cold. When their confidence is up, they're hitting out the roof. When it goes down, it's kind of sinking. So when a manager is a player's manager, he instills the confidence in a manager. It does have a big effect. You think back in Dusty Baker, what he's done with his teams over the years. They always consider him a good player's manager, brings him out, blames players to the team. Shin-Soo Choo, a guy that comes to mind. Best season of his career, arguably, in Cincinnati. He's here for a year, best season of his career. We've seen that with a lot of players. Raisel Iglesias right now, it just seemed like he had all the potential, but never completely. He was solid, really good, never completely figured out since he goes to Atlanta. And man, he's looking like a reliever of the year. If it wasn't for the way Kirby Yates was playing this season, he's been killer. Going to a team like that where you see a better staff around you, a better manager team to kind of point out the flaws, kind of bring the confidence up, if you will. I think that's huge. I think that's very, very huge. And we've seen something out of David Bell where, this bunch has been resilient. Go back to the confidence. You have to have the confidence that you can come back and win any single baseball game. We have seen that particular side of things out of David Bell, is creating a bunch of resilient players. We've seen that over the years with David Bell. You do have to give him credit there, and a lot of it. But we go back 6 years ago when David Bell came to this team. We have to remember, we can say what we want about the injuries now, what's on the field now. David Bell came in, and this team expected to win baseball games. Went through a really tough era with Brian Price, bit of a rebuild, retool. David Bell comes in. The Reds really spent more money historically in free agency than ever. Year in, year out, they was spending money. Castellanos, Moustakas, what was it? The Puig, the Kemps. Even if it was smaller guys coming to the team trying to make an impact. The trades, Tommy Pham. You're bringing guys in. They wanted to win. So mind you, when David Bell came to this team, you expected the Reds to be somewhat competitive, and they have been. They've been very competitive under David Bell. Not necessarily a serious playoff threat, but they've been competitive. We've seen him now 3 seasons finish right above 500, 3 games, 4 games, or 4 games, 2 games, and then the 1 game was a shortened COVID year. And a few games below 500. For the most part, minus the 1 season they lost 100 games, he has kept the team competitive. But you always have to wonder, is it competitive? Can there be more? Or is it competitive and could be a lot less? In that time, he's been to 0 divisional title wins. He's finished second once. That was the COVID year again. So, you do have to look back and say, well, how's the performance been? He's had 6 years to figure it out, and it hasn't necessarily been there. And I can't stress enough, I think you look at the development, you look at the confidence, big things managers can kind of control. I can't stop pointing at the Braves because it just feels like anything that goes to Atlanta seems to catch fire. Chris Sale, Marcel, guys go over there and just have career years. I don't think that's a coincidence that they just coincidentally go over there and they're killer. Having a good team of management organization around you is important. And having, not only David Bell, but the training staff. I can't stress enough. They gotta do something about this training staff. If Matt McLean's situation and these guys getting second opinions multiple times, guys getting setback out of nowhere unexpectedly isn't enough to say there's something that's got to be done about this training staff. I don't know what is. There's too many injuries. If you walk out of this season and you don't recoup with the training staff or the management, that something's not right. One of them's got to go. Both of them's got to go, really, because there's just too many injuries, too much unknown, too many things happen in this team. But that being said, everyone deals with injuries. Everyone's dealing with rebuild. The Reds aren't the only team rebuilding or bringing up young prospects and so on and so forth. And stuff like that's important. And what's most important to me is things that David Bell can control the absolute most, that I think is more undoubtable. That is the mistakes on the base pads, the aggressiveness on the base pads causing outs, and that is the poor fundamental baseball as a whole. That is the composure, the professionalism of the players on the field. We've seen the antics of Ellie De La Cruz throughout the season, where it just feels like he's just being silly. You didn't see that out of Mike Trout or Bryce Hart. You didn't see that out of these guys when he was that young. That reflects your manager so much. Like, he doesn't have control of his players and his locker room and so forth. Big concerns for me. But again, we've seen the mistakes on the base pads. We've seen a lot of miscommunication in the field. It's funny because you've seen a lot of clips of the White Sox looking lost out there. It's like, hey, I've seen out of the Reds a few times this year. That's not a good look, and that comes back to your manager, because the one thing your manager can do is harp, just like he does on bunting, just like he does in small ball. He can harp, and I love that about the guy. Got to bring that up real quickly. I think as Reds fans for a long time, we wanted to see small ball brought back. He's a very aggressive on the base pads, wants to bunt him over, sack bunt. We see that a lot more under David Bell than we have in the past. And I think that's a play style that does fit the Reds well, because it's considering their budget, their payroll year in and year out. You got to have some more small ball guys. You can't have 3 guys hitting 40 dingers a year. It just won't work. You can't afford it. So I love that they brought him in. It felt like a right fit and a right scheme from that perspective. In a way, it felt like they said, here's our Moneyball pick. He's overly data dependent. And you kind of need that. Get the most out of your players from a data perspective. But at the same time, you can't be over analytical. We can't over manage the game from that perspective. Lots of scrutiny David Bell's gotten over the years regarding that. But anyway, going back, what we've been looking at is the fielding statistics, the outs above average. I feel like a manager, when it's consistently bad defense every year, it does go back on the manager. How much are they worried about practicing? How much are they preaching? How much are they building a team around good defensive players? The outs above average for the last 4 seasons for the Cincinnati Reds. Above average for the last 4 seasons for the Cincinnati Reds. Minus, that ranks 25th, 29th, 25th, and 29th. Not pretty. And when you look back and think about all of those miscues, those mistakes, they add up game after game. How many times we've seen it this season? The Reds are 4 games below 500 right now. Just think of 4 times this season they've made bonehead plays on the field or in the baseline. Just 4 times. You could probably name 10. Think about 4 times that could have changed the outcome of those games. And they would have. I mean, maybe not, but you can say ifs and buts. But the Reds being one of the teams with the worst one-run records in baseball in history, that this stuff makes a difference. Because that one extra out there, that one play there could have flipped the game when they're that close a game. So it makes a difference. Imagine 4 of those games went the other way because of better defense, better fundamental baseball. Now, instead of 73 and 77, you're 77 and 73, and you're very much in a playoff race. And that's minor. There's teams finishing 40 outs above average. The Brewers do it year in year out. You wonder, what are they doing? Fundamentally sound baseball. So imagine they play fundamentally sound baseball now with what they have. Nothing else changes but that. Maybe they're 8 more wins above 500 right now. 8 more wins than what they currently have. So instead of 73 and 77, you're 81 and 69? Bang. Looking pretty good. Even with the injury, looking pretty good. That's what sticks out to me. If that doesn't stick out, in the last 3 seasons, the Reds have not finished in the top 15 in batting average or in pitching ERA. So you're bad on the base. You're aggressive on the bases, making a lot of mistakes. You're bad in the field. Your pitching's not coming together. Your batting's not coming together. At some point, you have to look and say, hey, we've given this guy a chance. Maybe he's a lot better than what we've given him credit for. And maybe he is doing a lot more with less. Very possible. But the Reds are in a very golden era for this team. You have rebuilt. You brought all these young studs in. They have to be groomed. They have to be developed. It doesn't feel like it's happening. And then you have even more guys in the system. You have a golden era. If you have a manager you believe can do better than David, but you have a golden era for possibly 10 years in Cincinnati of good baseball. If you get a guy that can get the most out of his players. And that is the thing. We're playing the ifs and buts. Again, maybe David Bell's the best. Or maybe the next guy you bring in is a significant upgrade. And maybe the Reds all of a sudden are competing for a division title, competing for playoff spots, competing for wild card spots for the next, again, 8 to 10 years. And that's not a stretch. When you look at these guys, if McLean's healthy, if you have Hunter Green, Lodola, I mean, you have a really good core of young players. And you're going to get another good draft pick this year. You guys got guys coming up through the system. For me, it's a slam dunk obvious one. You got to let David Bell go. You've given this guy 6 years to figure it out. There's no excuse for 6 years of mediocrity. You're sure if he had 1 bad year or 2 bad years, sure. But it's kind of been some of the same for how many years? He, overly analytical, overmanages baseball games. It just feels like the players, they do have a lot of fun out there. Sometimes they're a resilient bunch, but it feels like you see a lot of bonehead plays, a lot of questionable decisions. And you're just at that point where, of course, it's easy to micromanage any baseball game. Again, got to be careful there. As fans, anything that goes wrong, it's easy to point it out. It's just what we do. You always notice the flaws when you lose a baseball game. But when your team is young and it is as talented as this team and you are not getting premier play, it really feels like, again, are we being overly optimistic? But it really feels like this is one of those teams that could be a Tampa Bay or an Atlanta that brings up all these young guys at once and they come together, ball out, and potentially win a World Series. Because you have enough of that right here. And that is the scariest thing to me, is holding on to David Bell, knowing what you're going to get out of him. Let's be clear. We know what we're getting out of David Bell. 500 baseball. Again, some not good fundamental baseball. Can we get some good, exciting baseball teams? Don't get me wrong, some really exciting teams we've seen under David Bell, because those bats come alive. They win baseball games late. But we haven't seen consistent play out of them. There's always big hot streaks, big cold streaks, and we haven't seen fundamental baseball. We know we'll get that forever. The next guy could come in and win 60 games. Very well. Send him out the door in 2 years. Nothing to lose. Next guy could come in and win 100 games, though. And I think that is the thing with the Reds you have to have the switch up. You have to be open to, is being able to say, it's a risk. But there's a lot of reward out there. Worst thing that happens, you just get another manager. We'll see. I think you got to move on from David Bell. There's just too much saying, hey, what are we seeing here that's saying let's stay? Like I said, all the money they've spent in free agency, all the young prospects, the top studs, these guys coming up, that it doesn't feel like they're developing to the best of their abilities under this guy. They don't play with the most confidence. It doesn't feel like they have the faith in a manager sometimes. Could be wrong. Could be overlooking it. I think you look for another manager, though. We'll see what happens. Love y'all. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.